Of all the airlines that I review, Qantas leaves me with more questions every single time. I try my very best to standardize my reviews to make sure that every single airline is judged by the same criteria and make the playing field as fair as possible. Even still, Qantas has its hardcore fans that either come after me for criticizing our flag carrier or disgruntled Qantas haters that come after me for being too lenient with Qantas. Be that as it may, Qantas is an international airline, and as such they represent us on every single route that they fly. However, to that extent, Qantas has had a reputation for, I guess, flying the more modern aircraft to their Tier 1 flagship routes while sending some vintage birds to their less prioritized routes. However, the airline has promised us that this will change. One way to gauge the reliability of this is to look at their modern fleet and its future for Qantas, and that's what we'll be doing today. But first, let me welcome you back, everyone. It's great to have you with me as I fly the Airbus A220 back home to Hobart from Melbourne. The purpose of this channel is to provide you with a standardized approach to flying and airlines aimed at simplifying your decision making when it comes to choosing what airlines to fly. You must appreciate that these videos are only reflections of my experience and that your experience can differ significantly, but I will guide you to navigate the complexities associated with traveling each airline and simplify it for you as much as possible. Welcome to Melbourne Tullamarine Airport, where Qantas has a dedicated terminal for its domestic-bound departures. If you've been with me on this channel for long enough, much like most AvGeeks, I enjoy getting the physical boarding pass rather than something on my phone. I collect them and they give me satisfaction. So instead of using the self-service kiosk, I decided to use the actual check-in counter. To contextualize what's going to happen, it's important for you to know that the counter wasn't busy in the slightest. I went up to the check-in counter, said good morning and showed them my driver's license and said, "Hi there, I'm checking in for Hobart." The agent, visibly frustrated, said, "In future, please use the self-service kiosk." "Okay, buddy, good morning to you too." It's not like someone else needed tending to while she was checking me in. There was hardly anyone else in line and there were two other agents on standby. Anyway, bags dropped and off we go to the airside, somewhat glum that my vacation was over, missing my parents and my dog, but simultaneously looking forward to going back to base where my life is. I was looking out for the A220 that's going to be taking us to Hobart.
I actually can't see an A220 anywhere here.
I knew she was on her way inbound from Canberra, but while we wait, we can take a look at the Qantas story and find out what's happening. Lately, it just feels like Australians can't go too many days without Qantas dominating the headlines for some reason. So let's try and unpack where Qantas came from and its future. On the 16th of November 1920, the Queensland and Northern Territory Aerial Service, or Qantas as we know it, was formed by the Aussie flying veterans Paul McGuinness and Hudson Fysh. However, around the time of the Second World War, from 1939 to 1945, the airline served as a frontline airline while simultaneously serving Singapore and New Zealand. However, after the Second World War, Qantas lost its ability to remain private and was taken over by the government. But in 1947, Qantas achieved a massive milestone by inaugurating its very first flight all the way to London. Of course, it had a couple of stops along the way, but still, this was a massive milestone and they soon created other networks to Japan, Hong Kong and South Africa. Then the jet age was ushered in and Qantas got its very own Boeing 707. The 1960s in particular saw the exponential growth of Qantas, VJets opening up new pathways, around the same time when more migrants started calling Australia home. Now, most key milestones that we know about today have come after the privatization of Qantas. The A330, A380 and 787 were among the key players for the wide-body operations from 1995 to 2019, and yes, I'm aware that's a fairly big era to cover. This era in particular brought its own uncertainty with two recessions that followed the global financial crisis and COVID-19, but it hasn't stopped Qantas from pioneering important routes like connecting Australia to Europe and the US. So where Qantas goes from now, we'll have to be extremely patient and find out. Now for Qantas, the A220 might have seemed like a no-brainer to replace the 717, but believe it or not, the A220 was never actually built with the intention of being called, well, the A220. These planes were originally designed by Bomb Raider Aerospace, but after Airbus acquired the majority stake in the Canadian manufacturer, they changed its name to what we now call the A220. Remember those classic Qantas Link 717 routes like Melbourne, Canberra, and Hobart, apparently, well, the A220 will now be deployed on these routes in stages. The planes typically sport 137 seats split across 10 business class seats and 127 economy class seats. The bird this morning pulling in from Canberra is getting catered to and loaded up for its Hobart return. The crew this morning will operate Canberra-Melbourne, Hobart-Melbourne before they clock off. The introduction of the Qantas boarding group procedure is something that I've been keen to see, and it actually worked okayishly well. Our seat this morning, 12 Alpha, which features a USB charging port, plenty of legroom, an adjustable headrest, and personalized air conditioning vents. Boarding was well ahead of time because the flight was practically empty. Not a lot of people traveling to the bustling city of Hobart, apparently.
Avoid moving your seat.
Now that we're airborne, we can explore the Qantas network. The interesting thing, or at least what I find interesting, is that Qantas got rid of their in-flight entertainment system, relying on their consumers to bring their own devices to stream the Qantas network. Now, allegedly, the airlines are able to cut down on weight by doing so, but I'm not a physicist, and I can neither refute or verify this claim, although it would make sense. And the Wi-Fi being functional is a top-tier feature. Now, for meals, or for snacks rather, you get a muffin and a selection of drinks. You know the thing that Qantas keeps bragging about, that every fare includes refreshments? Yup, this is the offering. It was, okay. Like, if I was absolutely famished, it would have been fine.
It's actually not that bad. I quite like it. It's got almonds on top, and I think there's blueberries in the middle. Yeah, it's got a nice taste to it. Got a nice almond crunch. And I don't typically like almonds, but this one's actually quite good.
Dear passengers, good morning. My name is Ken.
The lavatory was in a very good state, nothing to complain about on that front. You get the classic towels, soap dispensers and sinks, nothing extravagant, but a far cry from the 717. As the flight made good progress, overpassing Launceston on a generally southern route, the weather remained extremely fair. When thinking about this particular A220 in general, the seats are designed for comfort, and the recline and adjustable headrest features put this product ahead of the 717. Now, in fairness, I was at the exit row, which certainly helped. What's crazy for me to think is that last year I would have done just about anything to fly on the 717, but having been on it 3 separate times, I can guarantee you that the A220 was very much needed. And while there might not be a huge contrast in terms of the cabin configuration, the refreshing appearance of the cabin is what sets this product apart. The Qantas experience overall though, well, it's certainly an improvement from my last Qantas Link flight where I was asked to delete my footage. I thoroughly enjoyed the in-flight service from the crew. One of the younger crew in particular was very friendly. The cabin manager up front perhaps thought his economy class cohort was beneath him and didn't acknowledge a single one of us, even when I said thank you as I disembarked. The two crew at the back though were hardworking and courteous. The meals, or snack rather, was palatable for the 1-hour jaunt to Tasmania, and boarding was efficiently managed, even bringing us in ahead of schedule. Stay tuned to the very end of this video to find out how Qantas performed and how it scored today on its flight to Hobart. Any and all information relating to this video is in the description. Check it out please. If you want to know how much I paid and what soundtracks I used, that's all available. While you're down there sussing those deets out, subscribe if you haven't already. It takes a split second and is absolutely free. I'll let you enjoy the landing now, and I'll revert to you when we're on the ground so we can summarize this flight very quickly. Alright, so where did Qantas perform well? First up, the A220. I like it. Like it's new, fresh, and a far cry from the 717. And while I do appreciate that this is a fairly subjective opinion, I can vouch that this is on the more comfortable end of the spectrum in terms of the Qantas fleet. Second, the two crew at the back were very hardworking and friendly. Of course, they got some Japanese Kit Kats from me as a thank you. So where did Qantas let me down? Firstly, the check-in agent being on the more passive-aggressive end of the spectrum. Imagine the first words you say to a paying customer are, "Don't approach me, use the kiosk." Like, why do you hate me so much? I'm just a goofy fella. Finally, and the biggest ever letdown of today's flight is that the bags took a whopping 1 hour to come out. The Jetstar flight operating the same sector arriving after us had their bags come out first, so what the hell? So where Qantas takes us in the future, we'll have to see, we really do. Changes are being made as this video is being edited, and changes will be made at the date of release. The intention of these changes are to improve our flying experience overall, so that every time a new CEO comes into office, the first thing that they have to do would not be to email its entire customer base with an apology. But okay, I get it. At least you acknowledge that the flying kangaroo needs some work. That being said, here is the final score for today's flight. The only thing I ask in return for you to access my content is for you to share it as much as possible and hype it up, much like this fella here. That's all for now. Have a very pleasant day, and I'll see you soon in another trip report.